Dude, I have that sweater. Did you get that from Mr. Simple?
I got it from Mrs. Simple, Mr. Simple's ex-wife. She does it basically the
Ah.
same job, but it's a little bit cheaper because of women.
Sure, it'd be more expensive, though, if it's clothing.
No, it's cheaper because you only have to pay a woman 80% of what you pay a man.
Nice!
It's a nice jumper, though.
Yeah, I love it. I love a neutral jumper.
Yeah, this is stone. I just love a stone.
It's not fucking stone.
It's stone.
Stone is grey.
No, what kind of stones are you looking at, man? Stone's all sand. Sandstone. That's the color of
You're
stone.
wrong.
Look up what stone is colored.
Oh. You're going to be wrong, though.
I'm going to be
very
right.
Embarrassed.
I can't wait for you to be so fucking just embarrassed at yourself right now. Do a bit of a quick Goog here. Look at what color stone is. Go to maybe the Iconic or ASOS, a reputable retailer, brand name. What that face seems like it's a little bit scowly.
Well, I pulled up coloured stones, so it's just like a lot of healing crystals.
Did you put anything about fashion or clothing in?
Oh, no. Oh, no, I'm right.
I don't know if you are right. I think you might find that stone is just a neutral, sort of whitey creamy.
It's a grey.
I don't think that that's right. Everyone, play along at home. If you Google stone-coloured clothes, what colours come up? Seems like a lot of cream to me there.
I bet you've said that before.
Okay, I'm going to look up semen and see what colour that
is. Good stuff. Anyway, it's a nice jumper.
Thank you. Yeah,
You get a beard trim as well?
Yeah, did a bit of a beard trim and kept that nice and
Looking
tidy.
very groomed. This is my new sex life here. Can you see that? That's my
Yeah,
new baby.
it's fucking
A new
beautiful.
synthesizer.
Yeah, was that a impulse buy? Did you see it? Were you eyeing it? Were you trying to buy it for ages and found it? What happened?
I've had my eye on this particular synth for about 10 years when we had the band, and then I just never really had the funds to do it, and then saved up a bit of cash, and I saw it come up. There was one in Sydney that came up, and they're not a really popular synth, so they're quite hard to find. And I found one in Sydney last week, and the guy, this is not really that interesting, but the guy said if I wanted it, I'd have to organize a courier, and that would cost like $200. And then I just found one by chance on a Facebook group, and I went around and picked it up.
Wow.
And it was great. Yeah.
Save yourself $200.
It's a beast. Saved myself $300 because I got $100 off because I heckled.
Nice.
I negotiated.
How much does one of those set you back?
It was $700. I got it for $600.
Nice. Cool. So have you been fooling around, getting the feel for it?
Yeah.
Is it everything you wanted and more?
Everything I wanted and more. It's like getting a new toy because you don't. I mean, the staple is the keyboard, so you know how to play chords and stuff. But all synthesizers are so different. So I've never played one before, but I just knew I liked some of the sounds. So it's just like unpacking this thing and
Working out how it does.
working out how it works. So it's really fun.
That's awesome. Oh, exciting.
Yeah, man. Exciting times. And how's everything else going with you?
Pretty good. I think I'm trying to remember when we last recorded. We would have recorded before I went over on my West Coast trip, I think.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about your trip.
Yes, I did a quick, well, not quick, it was 4 days over the long weekend a fortnight ago. Did a trip with KC over to the west coast of the South Island, which was beautiful. Amazing. It was absolutely stunning. It was, the west coast is famously sort of dreary and raining. It's very much like a tropical rainforest over there. It's the other side of like the Southern Alps, so it is a really sort of wet climate. But for the entire 4 days, we didn't see any rain whatsoever. It was blue skies. It was like a wonderful, like 15, 17 degrees. It was like foggy in the morning and that sort of thing, but that was about the worst of it. And just did a bunch of great stuff. Went to Hanma Springs, which is like a hot pool town. went to meet a friend in Westport, went to a glowworm cave and did like a caving thing for a half day.
Saw the Milky Way.
Yeah, went out to the middle of
What is that like? Like, I want to know what that's like.
So we were heading down to Franz Josef Glacier, which is down on the sort of midway down the South Island. And outside this small township, we were staying in a sort of, I don't know what you call it, like a independent cabin sort of thing, like a modern build cabin, but just like in the middle of a field. And we were not near the township. So in the middle of the night, you could just stare up at the sky, which was clear because it was beautiful weather. And you could just see the Milky Way. It was just perfectly clear. And yeah, so little light pollution. I mean, there's still lights on the houses and things, but it only took a second for your eyes to adjust and then you can just see the whole thing. It was dope. It's like dizzying, but in the coolest way.
Oh man, that's one of my dreams.
Yeah, well, you can do it. I mean, you're not that far away, and Trans-Tasman Bubbles looking like it'll be one of your few travel options.
Well, yeah, I've had it on my list for a while, so hopefully we can make it work this year.
Yeah. Pity you just bought that synth.
Yeah, I can sell it, though. These things hold their value pretty well. So.
Okay, yeah, nice.
You know.
But the trip was awesome, and then... yeah, and just because that was also the first time that we'd really been able to get out of Christchurch since, for months with the lockdown and all. So even just getting to go to new places and like see new things you hadn't seen before. The island's not that big, so we were only doing like 3 to 4 hour drives each day to get between these places, which is totally doable. And it was just like so refreshing to be out of your stasis, if you know what I mean, to see new experiences and new places and take in the sights. It was very like rejuvenating in a very like refreshing way. I felt super invigorated by it all.
Yeah,
it was lovely.
We went away just last weekend as well, actually, to a little coastal little seaside town in Victoria, just on the Great Ocean Road.
Lovely.
And it was like, we found this like pretty secluded Airbnb. There's not much around. You're just looking out, seeing just huge ocean waves and rocks, and it was just like, it sounds a little corny, but like it's so weird and amazing how that, like, I don't even know what like a soul is, but like you feel like whatever the soul is being like rejuvenated.
Yeah. If the soul is, inside you, it's probably in your head, right? So it is refreshing in the sense that a new part of your brain, or a part of your brain which hasn't been active in a while, is now like firing up. It's like processing new sights and sounds and smells and thinking about things you don't think of in your normal place. And it's nice. Shout out to Jude, who we caught up with in Westport for dinner, who listens to the podcast. It was lovely to get to catch up.
Nice.
Yeah,
I know Jude.
You do know Jude.
Hey, Jude. That's pretty good.
Don't bring me down. The other sort of bit of news, which we won't dwell on me forever, but we have been moved up in our Good Grief production schedule. So we're now going to be shooting around 5 weeks earlier than we thought we were going to be. Some of that is because we have been really sort of speeding through the writing process and not going to need as much time developing those scripts as had been budgeted for or scheduled in the calendar. And other stuff is just production coordinations, where it's going to be easier for us to get certain actors, hopefully, the earlier we shoot, because people are still coming out of this lockdown period and don't have things booked up just yet. And
that's very exciting.
Yeah, so it means as of recording, we're about 5 weeks away from camera rolling on our series. We're getting close to locked on our scripts now, and casting notices have gone out. People have been putting down like tapes to audition for or do screen tests for roles. And
so is the outline of the script is pretty much done, and you're kind of just fine tuning dialogue at the moment? Is that correct? Like, what's the process between finishing a script, getting location, and converting that into some sort of production schedule?
Yes, you're pretty close. So we did drafts that we were pretty happy with. We have a 6-episode season. We reached a point where we felt confident and liked what we had, but it was time to send it out to other people. So our production company had listed some writer consultants to have a look and read through and just give some fresh eyes and thoughts and suggestions on how to improve and change and that sort of thing. And simultaneously, it was also sent to the network for their first look at the full season of the scripts. Then we had a couple of weeks off there where they were going through that, thinking, making notes, sending it back to us. Then we read through the network's notes. They were actually really good. This was one of the reasons we were able to move up, was they didn't have too much to suggest. They had a few questions and a few issues almost puts too much weight on it, but things they'd noted and asked about for us to look at. And the writer consultants had come back with a whole bunch of good ideas. But the headline from both was that they really liked it and there weren't that many big issues. So we spent another week putting those changes into practice, doing new drafts. This was last week. The deadline that we were facing or chasing, we ended up spending this Monday just past like 7.5 hours on Skype, finishing off the last 3 scripts of this season in one day, which is like fucking brain draining. But the reason we were hitting that deadline was that now that we're getting this close to production, the schedule needs to be set for our shoot days. We're shooting across 13 days. And they need to know how to block those scenes that we've written into a timetable to be like, okay, we're going to be in the lobby today. Let's shoot this scene from episode 1 and this scene from episode 3 and this scene from episode 5. We'll do it all at once, and then we'll cut and we'll move somewhere else for lunch. And, to actually physically plan out how you're going to get all of this stuff shot across those shoot days, you need to basically lock down the scripts. So we were getting those new drafts done this week. And now that we have effectively sort of finished those, we can now go ahead, as you say, and tweak dialogue a little bit and nuance exactly what happens in those scenes. But the actual locations for each of them, the actual places that they're taking place, they're effectively locked now because they're starting to build that schedule out. So we still have a bit of wiggle room. We've approached, for instance, the Funeral Directors Association of New Zealand, and we're going to ask them for a whole bunch of thoughts and opinions and terminology and that sort of stuff to make sure that we're all kosher in the way that we're depicting the funeral home experience.
Sensitive.
So that will potentially require some dialogue tweaks and that sort of stuff.
Might get a couple of free coffins.
Yes, exactly.
If you're lucky.
So that sort of changing and evolution will still go ahead from this point. But for the most part, effectively, the guts of the season is now kind of done. It's pretty crazy. 2.5 years later.
Cool, man. Well done to you and the team. Very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's super cool.
Can't wait to lay my eyes on it.
I know. I'm really now that we're in this process where we are casting and finding locations and there's like a bigger team outside ourselves, it's all very real now in a very exciting way. And it's going to be happening sooner than I thought. A leading man?
Yeah.
What do you think this is, the 19th century?
Yeah, that's true.
There's no men in this show.
Yeah.
This is about the feminist left finally getting the chance to have their say.
I could play a woman.
You could.
Yeah.
Welcome to Deep Forward, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Oh, it's been nice, just knowing that you're out there and paying attention and keeping well. It's like a community, and I feel part of it, and I'm grateful to you all for it. And we're here to make your week. A little bit highfalutin.
That's
this
a
week,
lot
but
of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. We're going to make your month. Sitting through the internet with me, Michael. Say hi, Michael.
Yo, what's crackin' lackin'? Snoop Lion.
Okay. And I'm Nick.
AKA
Hi,
Snoop
Nick.
Dogg.
Hi. Yeah, I was waiting. Last time you said, do you want me to say that? And I just thought I'd give you a chance to say hi to me, but no. Okay,
So,
cool.
can you introduce me as Papa Mango from now on?
And sitting through the internet with me, Papa Mango. Say hi.
Hey, that feels good, man. That feels really good.
Oof. Don't know. Do you like mangoes? Why is this?
I do. I think mangoes are the cool. I think maybe I had this chat with you. I think mangoes are the coolest fruit.
Definitely didn't have this shit. This chat.
Do you want to have this chat?
Yeah, why are mangoes the coolest fruit?
We need to have this.
Should we have this chat? Guys, we need to have a talk. What fruit's the coolest fruit?
All right.
House
so
meeting.
mangoes.
House meeting, please, everyone into the living room.
I would love it if your housemates just heard that. They just came rushing in. Bananas are pretty cool.
What is the criterion for a cool fruit? Is it because you can say cool bananas?
Oh, see, no, I don't even think about that. No, you just know. You know in your heart what's a cool fruit.
Grapes.
That's what cool is. Cool is you don't. If you try to be cool, you're not cool. Trying to be cool is not cool. So just cool is just this thing.
So I think we can then like something like a star fruit. You're like, that's not cool. You're trying too hard.
You've hit it right on the head there. The star
But
fruits are so not cool.
What about like an apple? I feel like that's a bit slobbish. Like someone who should actually be trying a little harder, but just kind of rolls along.
I feel like
they've got the sort of careless thing, right? Like that sort of not caring about it thing, which can be cool. But
I view apples as like an old white man in a suit.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Like a little boring. Like
what about like a strawberry?
Ubiquitous.
What about strawberry?
Very feminine.
Yeah, yeah.
Very feminine.
Are you saying women can't be cool?
No, I wasn't. You said that. If anything, I was just saying feminine.
Check the tapes.
Feminine is cool. Feminine is cool. Just for the record.
But are they the coolest berry?
No, I would argue the blueberry.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool by color. That's a very cool color. Blueberries
What
probably
else
the
in
coolest.
nature is blue?
Well, what about a
nature
blackberry?
that's blue.
Because they got those little nubbins, you know. They've got that like texture. They got a bit of grit. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think I've ever seen a blackberry in real life.
How is that possible? You lived literally in Waterfall Gully.
Do they have blackberries there?
They're wild everywhere. They cover every fucking hillside.
Well, then I've definitely seen a blackberry.
Yeah.
Well, I've never eaten one.
Really?
I don't know. I'm just saying things at this point. Just hoping that something is true.
So here's let's get back to the point at hand. Why are mangoes the coolest fruits?
Why
not like a guava? Surely a guava is a cooler mango, right?
Guava is very, very cool. I love guava.
Uh-huh. But you think mango is still cooler than a guava?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I think mangoes are cooler than a guava. But a guava's cool. Very cool.
Why are bananas cool? Bananas to me
very easily peeled. They're like they're just so easy to peel, so easy to digest.
I think you haven't met enough bananas. Do you know the number of bananas where you grab the end of it and you're like, oh, fucking, come on, you prick, and you just end up mushing the inside of it because it doesn't tear properly.
Look, there's a few bad bananas in every bunch. But the majority of bananas are very, very easygoing.
I think a banana is a bit of a poser. I think it's like it's trying to be cool.
Controversial.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's almost phallic in nature, isn't it? But it's like a jock, you know, like this overconfident guy thinks he's all that, and then you know you give him one little bit of resistance, so you stand up to the bully, you punch him in the nose or whatever, and he just completely falls apart. He looks tough on the outside. You open him up, it's bruised all through the middle. Absolutely no structure there, just complete mush. I think that
you might have a point there. Actually.
I don't think bananas are cool, dude.
I'm coming around to your point, actually.
Yeah.
You might be right. Yeah, I get the jock thing.
Yeah.
They're definitely the jock of the fruit world.
I think bananas probably used to be cool, like in the 1960s. And then, like, as time and culture has evolved, we've started to look at them through fresh eyes and been like, why are we venerating this obviously pathetic fruit? They don't even breed, right? You have to clone. They're all clones. No. They're like a residual. Yeah. They're nostalgia for a time that once was, but they've passed their due date.
Yeah, and they bruise so easily.
And
when they bruise, they're disgusting when they bruise.
And everyone's like, oh, you can make
yucky banana.
You can put them in like a smoothie. Oh, you can make a cake with them. You've lost the fucking plot. Then, if you can't enjoy a fruit as is, then I'm sorry. Get out of my sight.
No, I'm with you. I'm convinced. I hate bananas now.
Yeah.
Hashtag fuck bananas.
Okay. Let's start a movement. Speaking of which. Hashtag white supremacy. Ooh, interesting times.
I love that you segued from bananas to white supremacy.
It is effectively the metaphor I was building through that entire time. Gosh, what a fucking year 2020 has been. I mean, to do a brief recap: almost war in Iran, pandemic, corruption of democracy, bushfires. And now, global uprising over the...
Kobe.
I said that, the virus, pandemic.
I said Kobe. Kobe dying in a helicopter crash.
Yeah, I don't know if that's on the same scale as a global pandemic. But,
it certainly didn't help.
It didn't help. I think that he would have been... He would have been appreciated at this time, unfortunately. But, yeah, now off the wake of the George Floyd murder... an international movement of in the wake of repeated systemic police brutality around the Black Lives Matter movement, and Trump in the middle of it all, of course, melting down. Walk me through how you've followed this the past couple of weeks. When did it first catch your eye? What were you thinking as it developed? Where are you now?
It first caught my eye when Emma and I were standing outside a cafe, and she's like, "Oh, how about this video of the cop kneeling on this guy's neck until he died?" And I said smugly, "That video is from years ago." And she was like, "No, it's not." And then we got into an argument, and then I was proven to be wrong. So that's when it first came to my attention. And then I looked it up, and pretty horrific. I've been thinking about this a lot. I have been talking about it a lot. I initially had some. I'll take you through what my perception or what my take on it was, and how it has changed even over a week or two. Initially, I was kind of questioning. So when it came out, people were saying this cop is a racist. I mean, people are still saying that. They're saying this cop is a racist. It's a modern day lynching. He's among other things, he's basically killed this guy, and that was proven to be correct. My initial reaction to it was that, are we sure? I would never doubted that there's systemic racism in America and a systemic racist attitude amongst law enforcement. But what I did initially question was, are we sure that this cop is kneeling on this guy's neck until he dies because he's black, or because the cop is a bad cop? So I was thinking about that for a while. And then it came out that this cop has had like a bunch of former indiscretions, and he's had several complaints about him. So my attitude towards the whole police racism thing has changed now to the point where now I'm kind of more aware, after thinking and after reading some stuff, I'm more aware that amongst certain law enforcement, especially in America, that there is 100% a double standard between how they treat white people and how they treat black people. And maybe that's ignorant of me for not realizing that at the start, but I think it's like it's your exposure to it and how much you actually. We don't live in America, but we see one side of the coin here, and it's basically just having a think and seeing the other. What's it actually kind of like for people of color, and that's my white priv as well, that I didn't even realize that, and that's another thing I've been thinking about, is what is my white privilege. But I've sort of come around to really not fully understanding, but really having a much better awareness of how people of color are treated against police, by police.
I mean, I think in some ways I was in the same boat, right? Which is where you have an understanding that this was something that people have been talking about, right? You're like, whether it's dramatized in film, whether it's commented about in terms of, you follow black celebrities from any persuasion, whether they're athletes or actors or writers or scientists or, anything, and you will hear stories about their interactions with the police, right? And at the same time, I think sometimes I don't know that I had necessarily put myself in their shoes to imagine what it would be like to walk out the door every day, right? Like, It's one thing to hear it and to be like, yeah, that fucking, I believe you, that fucking sucks, right? But to actually, I think what sort of changed for me over this course of this week is seeing just the volume, right? It's the fact that it was so widespread that protests and action could take place in every state of America, right? Like, when you think about it in that level, like a thing that happened in one town, in one place, with one cop killing one person, was so resonant for so many people that it created movements in 50 states, right? And protests in 50 different places. And all of them had the examples there. And there was the one, there was the George Floyd one that sort of kicked off this protest, and then here's another video, here's another story, here's Breonna Taylor, here's you go back in time and you recognize some of these names from the past, Trayvon Martin and Tamir Rice and all these things, and you can go back and all of these names, or some of these names, you even recognize yourself from, like, oh yeah, I remember when that kicked up 3 years ago or 5 years ago. But to see back to back the videos, end over end over end over end, the cases, the things en masse, I think that was what really changed it for me, right? It takes it from a one-off thing that I've heard about to look at how much this is fucking everywhere, right?
Yeah, I think it was this weird kind of melting, perfect storm, really. It's part. I mean, the video is. I mean, we're kind of. If we didn't have the video, this wouldn't be a thing. So that's one thing. And the cops, by the way, are wearing body cams, and this happened like a few months ago. So if we didn't have the video, or a few weeks ago, if we didn't have the video from the person on the phone, we wouldn't have heard about this. I mean, that's weird. The cops are wearing fucking body cams.
That's a good point, and one that I want to circle back to, which is the idea that technology actually facilitated and enabled this in a way that previously it hadn't. Like, the number of things that people have done on camera, knowing they're on camera, and that have been disseminated in this time and this era is amazing, and really a testament to the power of the smartphone and social media and all that kind of thing in a kind of revolutionary way. But it does also reinforce, like, fuck, if this is the stuff they're doing on camera, knowing that they're on camera, imagine the shit that they're doing when there's no one around, right? Oh my God.
Yeah, it's really scary, and it's interesting that seeing people asking or calling for the police to be defunded and stuff. And I mean, that's what we're getting to. Well, that's
Yeah.
what they're getting to, at least, you know.
I'd actually
Which
like
is-
that
I
to
don't
be
know.
the sort of second half of this podcast a little bit, to talk about the police in that way. But maybe we get back to that after a little bit more of the specific protest talk.
Yeah. So can I just say something on the protests? So
Yeah.
I got a question for you about. So these protests seem to me to be this like perfect storm of firstly passion for the cause from all over the globe. Did you have protests in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to get into it as too much of a distraction, but we had action as well. The New Zealand police dropped their use of carrying guns. Like they've actually removed that out of the officers' toolkit, so they're not carrying. They were trialing taking guns around the place, and they've actually said, "We've done the trial. It's over. We're not going to do it again."
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. So the other player in all this stuff with the protests is the coronavirus. So we've had people locked up for months, especially in New York City, where that was one of the biggest protests and one of the most dramatic. So people pent up in their houses for months, social distancing, and then all of a sudden we've got, you know, millions of people out in the street. So what's your take on like what the kind of hypocrisy there, of people, people initially before the protest calling for everyone to social distance and kind of calling people out on that, and even people in beaches, and then all of a sudden that's all out the window and people are protesting on the street. What's your take on that? Like, I heard one comedian say, I mean, it's a testament to how passionate people are that they are protesting despite that. But yeah, what's your take on that?
I think that ultimately the people that were on the streets did a calculus as to what was more important, and when it was their own potential health and the health of the community of people outside of them, they made the decision that it was the more important cause was that of the oppressed minorities around them who were standing up for themselves and deserved support, and that it was not done blindly, I suppose, is my takeaway from it. I don't think that you could say people were being reckless. They just saw the importance of what was happening and had to make a decision they shouldn't have had to make, but picked that of the greater good, if you like, an institutional good which might help generations to come if reformed or overthrown or dismantled, versus just the people in that city today, dealing with this pandemic.
All right. Well, that's a good answer.
I think the other interesting side of it, of course, as well, is the contrast to those, revelers out on the beach, or, the white, angry conservatives who were storming, police buildings with AK-47s or AR-15s, maybe, and complaining that they couldn't go and get their hair cut. Those ones who were, I suppose I'm just pointing out the multiple levels of irony or hypocrisy here, because those people who were so willing to like sacrifice a few grandmas and stuff so they could go and get a haircut and saying reopen the economy, is this, everyone shouldn't be, why are you forcing everyone to shelter at home? This is my right as a civilian to go out and do what I want. There is a little bit of hypocrisy to then turn around and point at people who are going out there to exercise their democratic right of free speech and protest brutalities, and be like, hold on.
Well, there's hypocrisy the other way, though, Nick, because you described it with them as they're willing to sacrifice a few grandmas, and then when you describe the protest, you describe it as they're enacting their right to free speech. So there's hypocrisy both ways.
Yeah, I that's what I'm saying. There's hypocrisy to it, but I'm just pointing out that the other option there is that, the people who were more than happy to go out and stand in line in front of a mayor's office and complain they couldn't go and get a haircut are the ones now telling off the protesters for not staying at home and for endangering the other lives. That is, in itself, a depiction of the privilege that they feel, right? Like the fact that it was more important for them to be able to go out and do what they wanted than the black and marginalized communities to protest the generational systemic issues that they were facing.
Yeah. I guess that like I said before, the coronavirus has been like a bit of a player in this, in that I feel like it's like fueled the intensity of the protests. I mean, if maybe like people being pent up in their houses has something to do with it, and I'm not gonna like use the looting and the violence as an example, but it did feel like there was a real intensity to these riots that I just feel like,
I mean, riots
like the
itself is
isolation
almost...
and social distance has something.
Yeah.
Go on.
Sorry. I think riots is a little bit of a misapplication as well, because ultimately the things that we were seeing here in terms of the protests were almost uniformly peaceful, right? It was the instigation of or provocation by police that was turning these things violent for the most part. And, I'm pushing back on the idea that it was riots that were going on, right? It was basically protests for the most part that then span out of control when, tear gas was used and that sort of thing. But
did you go to any protests in New Zealand?
No, when they were happening over here, it was when we were on the West Coast.
Would you have gone?
I don't know. I mean, I think safety-wise, we didn't have a coronavirus issue here, so it would have been that wouldn't have had to be a consideration. I would have considered it for sure. I mean, I think it is important that there be a cause locally that you are also acknowledging here. I don't know that a bunch of people walking the streets just for America's sake is necessarily the best use of people's energy. I think, I appreciate the solidarity. I liked seeing that there was like a haka in New Zealand that, people in America were responding to as a sense of solidarity around the world. But I think it was important that there was also things like the arming of the New Zealand police that people were actively looking for correction. And similarly in Australia, the light that was shone on the Aboriginal deaths in custody, the 436 odd people killed in custody over the past 30 years by police force. I think that was a very important thing that got more of a spotlight as a result of it. I'm on board with it when it's applied to a local cause, as well as being part of an international movement, right?
Totally agree. And there's so I find the I was thinking about whether I was going to go. I don't think that I would have. Not because I don't think it's a good cause, but there's something inherently like cringy to me about this like the social media wave where everyone's posting black tiles, and I don't know, that says something more about me, but there's something cringy about it. I just like it feels kind of a little bit disingenuous when people are. I mean, I get the solidarity thing, but it just I just know that there are people out there that are just doing it because all their friends are doing it. And even Emma, she was like, "Oh, should I post a black tile?" I was like, "Do you want to post a black tile?" She was like, "I don't know. I don't want to feel like an idiot for not posting one." I'm like, "That's not a good reason to do it." But you just feel that people are out there that don't have a real sense of what's going on and just doing it because they see it's a trend.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a couple of things that I want to circle back to here. But on the black tile thing, I think it was a little bit unfortunate because people were hashtagging the Black Lives Matter thing and putting up the black square, which for people who are actually in the protests and looking for resources and that sort of stuff, there were people trying to share things and information like there's medical supplies in this corner of this street, or call this number if someone you know has been like detained or whatever. And the flooding of that hashtag with black boxes with absolutely no information was a bit of an unhelpful thing, I think, versus sharing a black tile which had donation links or information for protesters, or something actually actionable. A mere demonstration of solidarity is something, but pick a different hashtag so it doesn't pollute actually useful information. And I saw that sort of changed a little bit, and the people after that first day were starting to share more resources and things. The other thing I want to circle back to, because you're asking about the lockdown and how that played a role in the protests of it all. I think that you're totally right, but I don't think that it was implicitly just the lockdown. I think it was also specifically Donald Trump, because I think it was not merely the fact that you had this pandemic going on and that people have been shut inside. I think it was reactionary because Donald Trump is so fucking aggravating that his inaction during the pandemic was making things worse for people. That is commentary, his commentary on the situation and his responses and lack of empathy in the situation was making people so fucking mad, right? That then when you come to this thing, which is, a tragedy and an unjust murder precipitated by a cop, and it could have been, defused is the wrong word, right? But if Obama had been there and had taken steps to be like, we're going to investigate this, we're going to sanction this police department, we're going to institute new laws as to the ways that you can interact with people over, misdemeanors like suspected fraudulent notes or whatever. There is a way in which a competent leader could have addressed the issue and made it better in a way which then didn't lead to protests. In a way, 100%. Arguably, it was better that it happened this way because there seems to be a better chance, and indeed have been results in which you've seen bigger change as a result of the protests and efforts. But I think
he's unbelievable, man.
I think Trump was the I don't know, what's the chemical term? The enzyme, the catalyst, that's what I'm looking for. He was the catalyst which made a situation that could have simmered and kept simmering like it had done for decades before, and upped the ante because he's so, he aggravated the crowds. He was so reactionary in his decision making, where it's like, all of the protesting got him scared, and so he was asked to inspect the bunker and this kind of thing. And then the news articles come out and say, he was a coward and he went into the bunker, and he was like, I'm not a coward, I'm going to go outside. And so then they organized this thing to the church, and of course they tear gas all the people to get to the church. And then he reads the responses. The White House
lights going out.
Yeah.
It was like
the White House lights.
So there's no way you can't attribute that as some sort of huge symbolic picture, it's like
putting up the fence around the White House, and so he tear gases all the protesters, and they're like, what the fuck are you like pushing away protesters, including like the clergy of the church you're going to visit, to then go and stand in front of it and hold a Bible upside down. And then the next part of that like feedback loop is, okay, well, they thought it was ridiculous or hypocritical that we went to a church but just stood outside, so we'll release this photo where we're standing inside it, awkwardly staring at the altar with nobody around. And like all of his decision making was so reactionary and news coverage led that anyone watching at home was just getting more and more riled up, right? Like he he specifically worsened the situation in a way that made the protests bigger.
Yeah. It's interesting now that Biden is basically just running on empathy. Yeah. And that's
just being a human being.
His campaign, and he's I mean, it's his to lose now, if you ask me.
It totally is.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean he won't,
Trump
but
is
it
like,
is.
No, yeah, he'll say something, or he'll grope someone.
Yeah.
But Trump is just becoming, as if he wasn't enough already, just becoming this caricature of himself, of a villain in a movie. Like it's so black and white almost. No pun intended.
So to speak. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And he's, yeah. I mean, I think this is a real turning point. I think you are seeing Republicans peel away. You're seeing former Republicans speak up against him. I know the party is so craven that they'll never completely disown him before November, but you are seeing definite, turn against him. And I just hope that rather than being piss weak about it all, the Democrats can build on it and just keep hammering him with his multitude of failures, from coronavirus to this whole Black Lives Matter movement to Russia to everything, and
he's not Trump, like all of us, or probably more than all of us. Actually, that's not true either. But he's had a bad year.
Yeah, he's fuck it. I hope he gets out in November. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there is definitely good progress here in terms of his popularity or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So let's circle back to the police themselves, because as you say earlier, one of the thrusts of this movement has been increasingly the idea of defunding the police. Do you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on that, what your understanding of the request is, how you feel about it?
Sure. Well, my initial reaction to it was that's a stupid idea. I mean, look, if they do go ahead with it, and by all, like Pelosi and Biden have both said that's not going to happen. But if that does happen to some degree,
I'll just jump in there just quickly to say that. Do you think this is something that needs to happen at federal level? Because isn't it really down to the individual states and cities who fund these?
Well, actually, I think that's what
departments?
Pelosi said. That's actually, that's what Pelosi said. She said it's a local issue.
Yeah.
My initial reaction is like, oh, good luck with that. But I don't know. Maybe, I mean, if there's another system in place that could possibly work. I mean, it's going to be very different. I mean, America has such a vastly different country. We in Australia have, we're pretty uniformed. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know what the other option is. My first reaction in my gut is to say that that's probably going to go poorly, but I don't really know that much about it.
What's going to go poorly? Are you thinking about like picturing a world in which there's no police?
Yeah, which might be a simplistic. Do you have more of an insight into what that would actually look like?
Yeah. I'll say up front that one of the best, most powerful, sort of succinct examinations of the past couple of weeks that I've watched has been the John Oliver episode about this. Have you seen it from this week?
No. Is he back?
He's back. You need to fucking watch this episode. It's all on YouTube as well. You don't even have to have a subscription. Jump on YouTube, watch the whole thing. It's 35 minutes long. It is fucking brilliant and blistering and angry. It's one of like the most angry times you've seen him, and I fucking love it when you feel that. And it ends with such a fucking powerful.
He's a ferocious man when he wants to be.
He is, but the anger at the end is not his. It's brilliant. I really, really recommend. If you're looking for like a dose of bird's eye, curated description of what's happening and why, everyone out there, go and watch the John Oliver Last Week Tonight episode on the police. It just aired this week on Monday. It's fucking unbelievable. One of the things they talk about in that episode, and one of the things I read up a little bit more about, was this idea of defunding the police. What does it mean? Why do you want to do it? There's a few different factors here. It's all very complicated. There's no easy solution to sort of systemic racism. But as a very skim kind of top level summation, there are things like historically police were actually established as like a racist group, right? To police black Americans and make sure that they were meeting sort of 1800s white standards, right? There's his historical origins of policing is off a racist archetype, right? There's then other things like the disproportionate application of funds. So I think LA, for instance, spends $1.7 billion a year on the police, which outweighs everything else in their budget, from housing and education spending and all this kind of stuff, by a factor of about 10, right? It's about 10 times more expensive to fund the entire LAPD than anything else. And we know that historically, making an argument that you would need to cut funding to the police would immediately be pushed back on by people saying crime rates will go up, it'll be, the end of society, you're going to take away money from the people that protect you. So it's been very historically unpopular to try and contain those budgets as well. So they are now so far out of whack. I don't know how they compare to Australia or New Zealand, for instance, but I would certainly believe that the American system in particular is very disproportionately weighted to the police departments. Then you have other things like
deep funding. So deep funding doesn't mean pull their funding completely. I mean, it means basically reduce the amount that we give them.
I mean, some of them, it depends on where you're looking. I'll come back to that in a second, because there are people who literally want to remove the idea of this police organization and replace it with something else. So they do actually want to scrap it. The idea is not that society descends into chaos and there is no punishment for people breaking laws. It's that the actual institution that's operating is doing so badly. So why should we keep funding them, right? Let's try and do it a better way. Yeah. Then there's things like the militarization of the police. You have the military-industrial complex particularly strong in America, and they have been offloading things like literally tanks and combat weaponry down to police departments as a way of just making money and selling their equipment to people. So you have hyper armored militaristic police departments, which why do they need tanks? That sort of questioning of should we be spending that much money to give them literally military grade weapons? And then ultimately the underlying question is, what is the purpose of the police? They have so many different tasks. They're called upon to do everything from almost social worker stuff where you're like clearing out homeless people, to crime scenes, obviously, to things like rape, which they've done terribly. The number of actual successful rape cases brought and the backlog of rape test kits that they have in America is absurd. So they're not doing that job very well. I think the ultimate question underlying it all is, what is the goal in any one situation where the police would be called in? And do they need to do that as an armed officer, right? So let me ask you this. What have your interactions with the police been? Like, have you ever been pulled over driving?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of times.
And do you feel in that moment like a little flurry of adrenaline and like nervousness, even if you haven't done anything wrong, when you see that light flash behind you?
I feel it when they're just around me.
Yeah. So the light flashes and you're like, fuck, okay, is that for me? Oh, God, where am I going to pull over? And then you're like sitting at the thing and you watch as they get out of the car and they walk over to you and you're like, oh, fuck. When you actually take a step back, isn't that fucking weird, right? Even knowing that you haven't done anything wrong, isn't it a strange kind of thing that we just accept that this interaction is going to be stressful?
Yeah, I guess it is, isn't it?
Like, there are people that can pull you over and ask to see your ID and that kind of thing, and you just sit there like a little bit like freaked out. Imagine what that would then feel like if you are a person of color, say, and you know the exact same things, which you've not done anything wrong, but you also know that there's a higher likelihood that you've been profiled or you're going to be subject to biases or stereotyping that makes your life potentially go very wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
So the question is, let me use another hypothetical. Let's say we have a situation where, like you faced not 4 months ago, 5 months ago, where you are walking down the street and a guy comes up to you, completely naked, and he's like clearly on drugs or raving or something, and he's wandering down the middle of the street. What is the actual goal that, as a society, we want to happen here? What do you want society to do for this person?
You want society to take away the danger, if there is, and then treat the person, if the person who's causing the potential danger, if they have a problem. I guess that's what you want.
Yeah. So if you come back and you look at this with fresh eyes and you say, what's the problem here? What's the goal? Then you can potentially look at a solution here which is slightly different, right? What you actually want to send into this situation is potentially a medical expert, someone who has some sense of, oh, this guy's on meth, this is what we might need to do. Or a psychologist who can look at him and be like, this one's having a schizophrenic episode. Or a social worker who understands that this is a homeless person who was potentially an addict, maybe, or has been displaced by some sort of change to his lifestyle or triggered by some form of withdrawal or something like that. And of course, you want any and all of these people to be safe in their interactions and dealings with these people, with the naked person in the street. But do you need this person to be approached with, a guy brandishing a gun or a taser or a weapon or something like that? Or wouldn't the ideal be, theoretically, to interact with this person, realize, okay, he was an addict, he hasn't been able to get his fix, and now he's having withdrawals, and maybe he took some cheap stuff which has had which was cut with something problematic and has given him this rage episode or whatever. What do we actually need to do here? A, we need to go and get him some medical help. B, we probably want to put him into some form of housing or something so he's not living on the streets. C, we might want to do a long-term kind of work or education plan to hopefully be able to help him help himself and get back into society, right? None of those objectives necessarily require a squad or a role that has force or violence or something involved in it, right?
Well, in that particular example, but are you arguing that potentially we don't need police, we just need other types of services? Because, I mean, there's obviously types and situations that call for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are going to be cases in which you need to have people with the ability to intervene to prevent harm to others, whether it's, like a domestic abuse situation or, anything involving someone that already has weapons out, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But for a vast, number of things, like pulling people over for speeding, right? Does that need to be someone who comes up to you with a gun holstered on their hip? Not really.
No.
Is that just actually causing stress and aggravation on people that do it, made a mistake?
Well, just to play devil's advocate here, maybe not here, but in America, where people can carry a concealed weapon, that might be necessary.
Yeah.
And you can pull someone over for speeding, but you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know the situation. I think this is just the framing through which people are starting to talk about this
Right.
defunding the police issue is like, okay, for the amount of responsibilities that the police have and the number of times that actually the people that have been attracted to this role have their own I don't know, personal desires and stuff caught up in the role, that is problematic. So you see, I mean, there are lots of cases of rape by the police, right, that will never get reported or resolved because it's the department itself that perpetrated the justice. You know, the message that came out about George Floyd and about what happened there is completely devoid with the reality of the video. I don't know if you saw what the original press release that came out was, but it was very much apportioning blame on the victim that was undeserving, right? So I think the other argument is that this body of people has become so insular, so self-protective, so backed by a union that refuses to see officers removed from active duty when they've committed a crime, that the actual institution itself has become ill-suited to actually doing the tasks that we need from it as society.
It's not a good situation when people who are meant to be enforcing the law feel like they are above the law because they are, by virtue of the fact that they are enforcing it.
Yeah.
And thereby just going, walking free on things that they themselves are doing. I heard this somewhere that I know we have the courts and everything, but you kind of need like the police of the police, like a separate branch. Mm-hmm. You need a body that's specifically looking at how police are policing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the reality is that the judiciary, the prosecutorial system, if you have the state pressing cases against, attackers or that sort of thing, then the prosecution and the police are often working hand in hand to obtain evidence and then prosecute, someone that did the crime. So there is an interaction between those departments already based on the needs of the job and the judicial system. So then when it comes to prosecuting someone in the department that you have been working with, you are potentially risking conflicts or more lenient, sentences and this kind of thing, because then the prosecutor has to get back to work with the partner of the guy that you just sent to jail for, putting a knee on someone's neck till they died.
Yeah.
The interesting, to loop back to the protests of it all, isn't it kind of fascinating and terrifying that the response to these protests against brutality then generated from so many police acts of brutality, right? Like the craziness of them being like, you know what? I'm going to tear gas people with no reason. I'm going to push back someone so he trips and bashes his head. I'm going to drive my car through this crowd of people just standing there. Isn't it?
How are you guys not hyper aware of everything?
Isn't it insane, right? What a reaction. You do this thing. No, I don't. Bam. Fascinating.
Yeah, the self-awareness of the police is, and we should say, like, I do feel bad for the good police out there who genuinely want to do a good job and want to serve the community in the best possible way, and the police all over the world right now just have such a bad name, and I feel bad for those guys.
Yeah, but if they were good police, shouldn't they be calling out their
absolutely
the brothers and stuff as well?
That's the thing. But yeah, it's a bit of a fall from grace for the police. They're touted even from tell kids they have little toys of police and stuff. They're meant to be the heroes and they're the villains.
Well, more than that, I mean they were the subject of idolatry across media for generations. How many NCISs and Law and Orders and John McClane's and cops have been the protagonists and the saviors for generations, right? It's very rare that you saw the crooked cops, other than something like The Shield or something like that.
Bad Lieutenant. Yeah. But I saw Cops the Show has just been cancelled. It was like one of the longest running shows ever, and they've just cancelled it. Yeah. With how they portray police.
Yeah.
All right. Potentially ignorant question. So, can you explain to me? So the cop, who's a white guy, kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes or whatever, and he says, "I can't breathe." The cop basically doesn't give a fuck and kills him. Do you think the cop did that because he's racist? And how does the systemic racism amongst the law enforcement, especially in America, how has that specifically played a role in George Floyd's death?
I think it's a reasonable question. It is impossible to know the internal thoughts of someone, right? But you can look at comparative actions and you can ask yourself the question, okay, so George Floyd was suspected, correct me if I'm wrong here, he was suspected of having used a fraudulent $20 bill. That was the crime that they sought him for. Yeah. If he was a white person going down the street, would they have jumped on him and held him down at his neck? It's a lot harder to visualize that situation, right? So what is the reason that they ended up playing out this way? Is it because... I mean, the idea of racism as well is there's levels of it, because very often racism isn't explicitly the thought, I think brown or black people are lesser than me, and so I can treat them badly. That definitely does happen, but often what the criticism of this whole protest has been about has been the structural and institutional stuff, which is often more subconscious or unwitting than direct racism. So I think in this situation you have a profiling kind of problem where it's like, okay, there's a black guy, and the way that white officers feel when they see a black person is potentially one of intimidation, even though that's that guy's just walking down the street, but that's a cultural or kind of learned.
They are more of a perceived black people are more of a perceived threat to white men,
with absolutely unfounded, but yes, that's a cultural thing, right? There's an otherness to it, right? They don't look like me, so I don't see them as a human. I mean, look, I'm not trying to fucking break down what racism is overall, but in terms of the way that they're approaching that situation, that was an escalation beyond what the actual crime deserved, right? If he had actually done the thing, which was I used a fake $20 bill and I stole, I don't know, a can of Coke or whatever it was, that doesn't deserve physical abuse, right, for that arrest. If it was,
but do we know? And again, maybe a bit ignorant here, but do we know that he retaliated or he,
I think
is that video?
I think it's on the video, right? You can watch it. I admit that I didn't watch past. I didn't watch it all because I didn't want to. I'm not the person that likes seeing that.
No. I got another. This is a stupid question round. It's always a stupid question round with me. So if we had an example then of a similar case with a white cop with a white guy, who basically did the same thing, would that mean that this act on George Floyd was not necessarily racism?
I mean, there have been white people killed by the police as well, absolutely. I think you can't look at an individual one-on-one comparison. You need to look at it in aggregate, and we know that the data against the killing of black people by the police versus white people was so disproportionately higher. So the simple existence of one other instance in which a white person was killed by the police doesn't make George Floyd's killing not racist.
Yes, no, that was actually a stupid question. Once you answered it, I realized
it's all right.
I just had a little bit of a tough time matching up this cop killed this black man because the cop is racist.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't clear to me. that link.
So
But I do get that.
According
it's
to the
symbolic.
description,
It's symbolic. Yeah.
sorry, according to the description of the incident, the cops arrived, briefly entered the restaurant in which the employee said that Floyd had paid with a counterfeit bill. The police drew his gun and ordered Floyd to put his hand on the steering wheel of his car. Floyd complied. Lane holstered his weapon. Lane's the cop. Someone nearby then starts recording. Then there's a brief struggle, and the cop pulls Floyd from the SUV and handcuffs him. And then he sat on the sidewalk next to the restaurant and was calm and said thank you. Floyd was calm and said thank you. And then they tell him he's under arrest, walk him to the police car. Floyd fell over. The officers picked him up and put him against the car door. Floyd told the officers he was not resisting, but he was claustrophobic and did not want to sit in the car. And then another police car rocks up. They tried to force him into the car. Floyd told him they couldn't breathe. And then they pull him out of the car. He's still handcuffed. And then they put the knee on the neck and he hold him there for nine minutes until he dies. So in all of those interactions, I don't think there's any suggestion that he was fighting them,
resisting
or anything in a way which was like, you know what, we need to really just pin him here.
Yeah. And I think this incident has, even if we can't really pin down the cops' direct motives, it's certainly a accurate symbol of the system in America.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, how do you prove racism? Well, you prove it in aggregate, not necessarily in specifics, because for most part, no one's going to say before they do the thing, I'm doing this because you're black. So you have to do it through implication and broader.
If you're the KKK.
Yeah. To summarize, I think it's going to be very interesting watching how this continues to develop, because we have already seen results from some of these things. We saw the officers involved arrested. We're seeing, a lot of pressure applied on police departments and councils and things to cut budgets. The LAPD had their budget cut. We saw one city, I think in Minneapolis, actually announce that they're going to just remove the police department altogether, start fresh, rehire people with a strong, emphasis on getting good and competent cops and clearing the board from all those who've been implicated in lots of ongoing abuses of their power. So we are seeing results. It's going to be very interesting to see whether or not, say, the Democrats, if they sweep through some power in November, are then able to translate into the broader policy goals and changes that people are protesting for. But I hope so.
Yeah, will be an interesting couple of weeks.
Maybe we do a quick little recommendation engine, because I got one relevant suggestion here. How's that?
Sounds good to me. Got the keys?
Welcome to Deep Thought's recommendation engine. Cool. Okay, one relevant one, which came out last year, 2019. Brilliant TV show. Now feels very even more timely than it was then. Was Watchmen, the Damon Lindelof HBO 9-part series. One and done. Somewhat based, but mostly a remix and a reimagining and an updating of the graphic novel. Watchmen in 2019 was a incredibly bold series examining the intersection of race and policing in America through a generational story that touched on the Tulsa riots and the Tulsa massacre back in the 1900s, and then followed that train of thought through in sort of an alternate timeline to ours, in which reparations were paid out, and the police had to start wearing masks because their identities couldn't be known for security reasons. It was a very fascinating exploration of power and racial dynamics in America through the lens of this graphic novel. And I highly recommend anyone who's looking for a very contained, dramatic, ballsy kind of series to go and check it out, because it has some amazing performances, really beautifully shot, and a soundtrack by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, which fucking kicks balls. It is.
I might take you up on this recommendation.
It's juicy.
Do you reckon I'd like it? Is it superhero-y?
It is superhero-y, but not in a Marvel Superman kind of capes and cowls are the coolest. We're going to say our witty one-liners. It's more like it asks the question like, why do you wear a mask? What are you trying to achieve? And it's like violent, and it's strongly laced with the kind of historical, racial exploration of cops and things. I think you've got a chance of liking it.
All right. Well, yeah, I've been listening to the score when you sent it to me, and the score's wicked.
The score is so fucking good.
Yeah. I'll give it a
Jeremy
download.
Irons, Regina King, Yahya Abdul-Mateen. Just an amazing cast.
Cool. I've got one. I watched a great movie the other day called Vast. Wait, I should probably get the title correct. I'm going to recommend it. The Vast of Night.
The Vast of Night.
Yeah. So it's this. It looks like a little indie movie. I wasn't really sure. I just got recommended it by cousin Dan. But it's a really different kind of movie. It's I've got a little bit of a thing for UFOs, and it's not like very UFO-y. Mm-hmm. There's like 3 movies that are about UFOs that aren't like tacky, and one of them is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Signs I thought was actually really good as well. M. Night Shyamalan. And this one, really subtle. There's no like aliens and shit. I shouldn't give it too much away, but check it out. Really great dialogue. Really interesting movie. Great score.
2020 release? Like it's new?
Yeah, it's new. So I think that's actually on Amazon Prime now. It's an Amazon Prime movie.
Awesome.
So yeah, check it out. Really good movie.
Cool. Well, if you've been needing a bit of a break from the world, then there are plenty of podcasts in our archive that you can duck back into and get a taste of lighter times before it was 2020. So you can head to deepfort.podbean.com for the full list, or just scroll down in your podcast player. If you're there, you might as well give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It would help. Otherwise, you can follow us on facebook.com/deepfort, or jump onto Instagram and look us up. There's more recommendation engine things there and tastes of future merchandise. But there will never be an example of Michael doing a workout, because it is beyond his means as a human being to commit to one simple promise.
It's because I've just stopped working out.
Twitter.com/Facebook, and just get the latest there. And send your questions and thoughts to deepfort@gmail.com, including your suggested recommendation engines if you've got any good ideas for us.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself, Nick.
You couldn't have. That's why I do it.
That's why you do it. I was thinking about that the other day as well. That I just don't. I'm just not the guy that does the
talking.
Getting another example. Fucking hell. Can't make this stuff up. How do you want to wrap up?
I've done a lot of talking, so I'm just going to let you talk and tell a story or a joke, or if you got a weird news or something. I'm in your hands now.
I got a silly story and a weird news.
Love it.
But if the silly story is a little tone deaf given the conversation, or is it fine?
Is it silly to do a silly story? Is that what you're asking, or is a silly story about this funny thing you saw happen to a black guy?
No, it's not. Just no, are you fucking serious? Actually, maybe I'll tell the story. Maybe it's a bit light. All right. So, it's a short one too, so you don't have to strap in. So,
Straps off,
caught
everyone.
Caught an Uber the other day, going to my brother's house, about a 15-minute ride.
Oh,
That's
that
not a
reminds me.
relevant detail. And the Uber driver, sometimes they arrive before you're ready and they text you saying, "I'm arrived." So I go out, I'm in the cab, going to Ben's house, and the car smelled like pop-offs. Smelled like farts.
Thanks for translating.
So, when you're in the...
It smells like farts, yeah.
You're in
Someone's
a
been
cab or
farting.
you're on the bus, you know how you text? You know how... This is going to be my stand-up. You guys text on the bus? So I'm texting Ben. This car smells like pop-offs. I press send immediately. I didn't even think about it. Hear the ding in the car. I sent it to the driver. I told the driver this car smells like pop-offs. This Uber smells like pop-offs.
What? Tell me, how far were you? How far were you from the destination at this point?
I was halfway in. Thank God he didn't pick up his phone.
So
I
like
just saw it come
15
up- I just
minutes?
saw
What
it
are we
come up on
talking?
his 10 minutes, but he didn't see it. He would have seen it after. I bolted out of that Uber. But I didn't even say, there was no, context to, me sending it to Ben. I didn't say, hey, Ben, get a load of this Uber. It smells like pop-offs. I just said this. So it's just like I just told him this. It's just like I just told this Uber driver. I was like, hey, man, so you know, this car really smells like pop-offs.
But I
Why
don't
did
want to
say
tell you.
pop-offs?
Yeah, I don't want to tell you with my mouth. I want to tell you with words.
Yeah. Fucking hell.
Did you tip him?
No. It really did smell bad.
Well, that's entertaining. How did Ben feel when he found out he'd missed out on the text?
Oh, I texted Ben.
Oh, you
Once I
you
realized.
followed up. Yeah. Okay.
I
good.
double texted.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let Ben go without knowing that.
Do you want a fun fact?
Yeah.
A little fun fact. It's a fun fact.
Imagine if I just said no.
That would be comedically fun.
Yeah.
Do you want a chance to say no?
Now I want to hear it. I love a fact.
My boyfriend was looking through my phone and decided that Ben is more attractive than you.
Sorry, why?
Okay.
Was he looking through your phone? And also, what the fuck?
Yeah, you missed the lead there.
That's not nice. Why the fuck would you tell me that?
Well, because
And
I thought
also,
it would be entertaining.
Was your boyfriend on drugs?
No, I think he, just looked at your presentation in my photo album and decided, Ben's got it going on. That's much better. You let yourself go a little bit. He's got a sort of debonair look.
What the fuck?
I think he's got sort of casual, confidence, I guess. Or
well, does he know that Ben's got eczema?
Oh, I'll have to let him know.
So
You can do that.
Does Casey listen to this?
He has done, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can fix eczema with a
fuck
cream
you,
though.
man.
There's not
Fuck
really
you, Casey.
much you can do.
If you're listening,
So
I'm not even listening to Nick at this point. I'm just talking
fine.
directly to your boyfriend. You just lost any chance you had with me, mister. It has been a fear of mine that Ben is more attractive than me.
I can
Because I think
understand
on
that.
the whole, generally speaking, Ben is considered more attractive. I think he's more conventionally better looking than me, maybe.
Yeah, even
But not-
unconventionally.
But I'm unconventionally, I don't know. Maybe he is.
You're an unconventional 7,
We'll take it.
but the scale's different.
What's the scale?
Because it's unconventional, it goes up to like a 13.
That's really funny.